We've all experienced that moment when motivation simply doesn't feel like enough to keep going. We live in a world full of motivational videos and quotes that promise to inspire us, push us forward, and make things happen. However, the excitement we feel after watching a motivational video fades quickly. Motivation seems to come and go like a wave of energy, but then it's gone. That's because motivation often depends on a dopamine spike in the brain, which gives us a quick boost, but isn't enough to sustain long-term habits. Dopamine, the so-called motivation neurotransmitter, is often mistaken for the pleasure neurotransmitter, but its true function is to drive us into action. The problem is that this motivational energy is temporary, a peak that dissipates shortly after. You've probably noticed it. You play a motivational video when you don't feel like doing something important, like going to the gym or starting a project. And in that moment, you feel a renewed energy. But try doing that every day, and you'll see that quick motivation isn't enough to build a consistent routine. It can't sustain the discipline needed to achieve deeper, long-lasting goals. Instead of depending on a temporary boost, the real motivation that moves us forward is the one that comes from within, something more constant and intrinsic. This kind of motivation flows naturally. It doesn't depend on external stimuli, but on the clarity of the goal we want to reach. What we need, then, isn't more motivational videos, but something that consistently supports our actions. Intrinsic motivation is what stays with us over time. It grows stronger as we repeat our actions, creating a self-sustaining cycle. It's like a bucket that, once full, stays full. Unlike extrinsic motivation, which is like a bucket with holes at the bottom, water gets in but quickly escapes. To build this inner motivation, there are no shortcuts. What we need is discipline and consistency. That doesn't mean having willpower all the time, but creating a habit that, over time, becomes more natural. Motivation, when channeled well, is the fuel, but discipline and consistency are the engine that keeps everything moving. Let's stop depending on temporary highs and start building a lasting strength that will carry us where we want to go, with determination and a clear sense of purpose. When we align what we do with what we truly want, then yes, motivation becomes a powerful ally on our journey. In the previous part, we explored how dopamine-driven motivation can be helpful in the short term, but isn't enough to maintain habits and long-term goals. Now, let's dive deeper into a fundamental aspect of reaching our goals: intrinsic motivation, that force that comes from within and pushes us forward even when there's no immediate reward. What many of us seek on our path of personal development is a motivation that's sustainable, one that doesn't rely on motivational videos or external encouragement. We want something that lasts, something that supports us even on the tough days, when excitement fades and exhaustion creeps in. That's where true motivation comes in, the kind that's born from within, fueled by consistency, repetition, and the clear purpose of our goals. Many times, we try to find shortcuts to reach our goals, whether it's dieting, exercising, or studying. But the truth is, there are no shortcuts to success. True achievement comes through consistency. It doesn't matter how motivated you are at the beginning. If you can't sustain that energy, the path will become difficult and frustrating. The key lies in doing what needs to be done, repeatedly, even when motivation seems to vanish. That's why it's important to build daily habits that align with your goals, so that you create a solid foundation where discipline, self-control, and repetition become the pillars of your success. Motivation that doesn't feed itself tends to fade over time, but intrinsic motivation, the one that comes from within, has the power to renew itself continuously. By learning to sustain your efforts even when the excitement is gone, You'll realize that, in the end, success becomes a natural consequence, an expression of your consistency and your commitment to what truly matters. Now that we've reflected on the importance of intrinsic motivation and consistency, it's time to explore the essential role of discipline and self-control in our transformation journey. Discipline, often seen in a negative light as something rigid and dull, is, in fact, the key that unlocks our true potential. When we talk about discipline, we're not referring to something we must force or blindly follow. On the contrary, true discipline is the one aligned with our values and deepest goals. Rather than being an external force that pushes us, it arises from our inner ability to act with purpose, regardless of obstacles or momentary resistance. And here we arrive at a crucial point. Discipline is not about doing something we don't want to do, but about doing what we know we must do, even when there's no immediate reward. The Stoics, wise in their approach to life, considered discipline an essential virtue, something that leads us to live in harmony with our true nature. They teach us that, just as body and mind were made to work together, discipline should also be seen as a form of freedom. Freedom to make conscious choices. Freedom to build the path we want to follow. Freedom not to be enslaved by the temptations of the outer world. True freedom comes when we're able to say no to distractions and yes to what we genuinely want to achieve. Discipline, then, becomes the force that allows us to move toward our goals, overcoming both internal and external obstacles. And more importantly, it teaches us that every small step is valuable, that persistence is what takes us from point A to point B, no matter how many times we fall or how many challenges we face. Many times, when we find ourselves unable to maintain discipline, it's a sign that there's a deep emotional programming pulling us away from the actions we know we need to take. These programmings are not just excuses or momentary weaknesses. They are patterns rooted in our psyche, born from old beliefs, unresolved fears, and traumas that invisibly prevent us from acting on what we know is best for us. It's as if our mind and body are locked in unconscious resistance, often created by past experiences that we still carry within. These emotional programmings make us believe we're incapable, that we're not worthy of success, or even that we don't deserve to reach what we desire. Every time we commit to taking action and face inner resistance, we need to look deeper and ask, where is this resistance coming from? What are the underlying emotions stopping us from moving forward? These emotions can manifest in many forms: procrastination, fear, shame, or even the feeling of having no energy to act. But what we need to understand is that these emotions are not a final sentence. They are signs that something inside us needs healing, that there's something unresolved, an aspect of our consciousness that needs attention and care. So, instead of blaming ourselves or trying to force discipline unsuccessfully, we must learn to work with these emotions. We should create space to look at them, understand them, and gradually reprogram those limiting beliefs. The path to true discipline is not a constant battle against our resistance, but a process of internal transformation, healing, and release of the emotions that imprison us. When we're able to identify these emotional programmings and free ourselves from them, discipline becomes something natural. It stops being a painful obligation and starts becoming a reflection of our inner alignment, our commitment to our true essence. And so, with patience and self-compassion, we can achieve a discipline that not only helps us reach our goals, but also leads us to live more fully and with greater fulfillment. Finally, by applying discipline and self-control in our lives, we are not only shaping our habits, but also shaping our destiny. It's not about following rules imposed from the outside, but about creating an inner structure that guides us with clarity and determination. By integrating these principles, we'll realize that the journey toward our goals isn't a struggle against ourselves, but a path of alignment and evolution. And at the end of that path, we will find true peace and fulfillment.